everything. So
You mind if I go grab a refill on water super quick?
yeah, that's fine. I gotta
I
pull the
just
drawings
wanna
up anyway.
be settled when we get started
No,
here. Okay, give me just a second. I'll be right back.
You're all good. I'm gonna get water too, I guess. Yeah. Hey,
Huh?
Pepe says hi.
Hello.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. I was trying to pull up these drawings and I got sidetracked by my water field trip to the kitchen. All right, let's find this dang thing.
I think I'm on the way back, stop by the drugstore and pick up a flu test just to make sure I rule that out.
Well, I hope that it's nothing too serious. I mean, you were coughing up pretty bad the other day, so
What's up, brother? How are you? Fantastic.
hoping you start to feel a little better here.
I think it's just a viral infection, but you can't be too sure.
That type of stuff. Yeah, it could be, but just in case.
Yeah.
Anyways, cool. Waiting for here. I got the drawing pulled up now.
No, I'm gonna just do two espressos.
Reading Keaton's email.
Sounds very lively over there this
Might
morning.
say like
Lively?
Yeah.
Oh, we got Trey over here talking up a storm. Per usual. That's just Trey.
I could hear a bunch of voices. Wasn't sure what was going on, if y'all were having a party or something.
Let me check to see if my audio settings are going through. Oh, it's going through my. Okay. I'm gonna try to restart Teams. It's going through my my webcam versus going through like my actual headset. And when that happens, usually you get a ton of background noise. So I'll be right back. I'm gonna just try to restart Teams in my headset and see if I can fix that.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I'll be right back.
All right. Jacob's got to restart Teams because the thingy was going through his headset, or it wasn't going through his headset. So.
Oof. Got back just in time then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. Let's see if it's working now. Sorry, Callie. Right before let's see audio settings. Make sure. Okay, I'm going through my headset now. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Cody pointed out that he was hearing a lot of voices. I'm like, one sec. Checked in my, if that's happening, usually what it is like your audio is pulling through your webcam versus your headset. And it picks up all kinds of ambient noise. And so I was like, I got to restart Teams and restart my good old headset here and see if I can get that fixed.
No
Ugh,
worries. But it got
Yeah.
fixed. It's always
Yeah, I was gonna
frustrating
say.
when Teams isn't working.
Right. I mean, like, I can't imagine trying to watch this back later and all you hear is a bunch of like jumbled up audio. So, all right. So we kind of did a little bit of this last time we were on this call. Last time we've plotted all of our views. We put them all in paper space, or sorry, model space, and kind of laid them out. Last night I was helping Greg out with getting this wrapped up because he had to try to release it before the end of the week. And so I was trying to see if I could just knock it out real quick for him. I figured it's probably no big deal because then what we can do is we can at least review what all I had done. And I know I got a couple things I want to change too that I thought about after I had finished plotting it, and I was on my way home yesterday. So I'm going to go through those, and we'll look at some of the stuff that I had completed since the last time we spoke. So the last time we talked, pretty much took our flat shots, our section planes, and section views off of our model. We put all those in our paper space, or sorry, again, model space. We switched over to 2D wireframe, so we were dealing with our 2D lines here now. Model still living up here in the top corner, but that's okay. So in between now and the last time we spoke as well, I kind of cleaned these up a little bit. I didn't change any of the geometry of the views, but I did go through and I put anything that was not by onsite on the existing layer. So you could see that there in gray. That is more of like a little bit of extra finesse. It's really not anything that's really required, but I kind of like doing that. I kind of missed these lines here, so that's another correction here real quick. Anyways, I kind of like to put anything we're not doing on the existing layers so that it grays it out and makes it a little bit more clear as to what it is that our intention is to provide. So I went ahead and did that yesterday. I actually see there's something else here too. Right here. Looks like I may have forgotten to, I might have hid that plate by accident when we took our flat shot. There's like a steel plate that's supposed to live right here too. So I'm gonna put that back. I'm just copying it from the one below because it's the exact same plate, just copied up above. So anyway, yeah, I grayed out anything that wasn't part of our scope, including Jean, newly named sitting lady. Carefully went through and made sure everything that was by us was on the geometry layer, so it's all in blue right there. There's a little bit of weird stuff here because this is the stringer going down, but then this blue here is where that stringer cuts through the platform below. And so I left those lines as blue because technically that's part of the top of our platform, even though the stringer is here. So I kind of did a combination of the two there just to kind of show like, hey, that's the stringer, that's the platform. See, this here, I also left it as blue too, because the same reason, it's kind of where that stringer intersects the platform. And so I was like, well, that's kind of the top of the platform where we're cutting out for that stringer. So I left it blue as well. Pretty much the same notes over here too. I just kind of went through, grayed everything out that wasn't us, kept everything in blue or the geometry layer that was us. Except that. See, now I'm like scouring these for like mistakes because I did this kind of a little bit near the end of the day yesterday. So no, that's part of the plate. Okay, I think we're good. Anyways, yeah, I just did that. Then I came down to my plan view. And in the plan view, I kind of went through, I'll go back to my paper space so you can see what I have here. I created 3 separate plan views for this drawing intentionally. One of them is just the planter itself without the staircase on it. That was just so we could show the planter and platform in detail here. Actually, I'm going to put a little note on here since we're looking at this now, like a drafter's note. and it's going to read something like staircase and stringers. Whoops. Removed for clarity. That way we could actually see the extents of that platform. I'm going to underline that part too, and then get rid of that little leader. But I'm just going to put that note here near the bottom of my view, somewhere close to where my view title is here, just to give them a heads up. Hey, there would be stairs here, but I removed them intentionally so you could see the planter. So I'm adding that note here for that. I put a couple of notes on here too for these cutouts that are going around those stringers, because those are all going to have to be like, usually what we'll do is we'll do them in the field, because if we were to try to cut those in the shop, there's a very good chance it's not going to actually line up with what's going on in the field. Unless we get like a laser scan of this room or something, which I know we're probably not going to get. So I just put a note on here saying steel stringers by others and platform to be notched or to be field notch around the steel, just so that way our installers can see that and they can be like, okay, I need to know that I know that I need to go out there with like a jigsaw and go out there and cut this out. I also did want to make sure that I take note of this too, is that where this cutout is, in order for that to slip over that stringer, we do need a field joint somewhere in that cutout, just so you can kind of push it together like a puzzle piece around the stringer. Because if you were to just put the cutout, like if we just put the cutout here in the middle, oops, it won't let me do it. It won't let me do it. All right, that's okay. So if we put the cutout like there for say, and the field joint was like back here, there'd be like no way for them to actually get that platform around that stringer without like some kind of a field joint intersecting where the cutout is. So it was kind of unintentional, but it happened in our favor here that the cutout does like intersect a field joint. So just wanted to bring that up, because if you don't have that, it would be really hard for them to figure out a way to be able to get those two platforms to merge around the steel stringer that's already out there. Let's see. The planter itself, I talked to Greg about this yesterday, and it is all undetermined as far as what the finish of the planter is going to be at this point. So yesterday we talked about that a little bit, and we made the planters. We try to make the field joints no more than 48 inches wide by 8 feet the other way, just in case it is some kind of material that is only restricted to a 4x8 sheet. So we did that a little bit, like a little prematurely, to make sure that like if there is a smaller like material they select for this, we're able to make it work. So those field joints are put there intentionally in that way. I also labeled all of the top of the planter as TBD with a material bubble too. Did that intentionally here because I put one on the stair step at the front of that planter too. But I did that intentionally because at this time we don't know what that's going to be. But depending on how bloody the red lines are, Greg may or may not ask for our help with this. And so if I'm setting him up to be more successful later by putting these bubbles on here, even though they just say TBD. But for him, if I put those there now, and like I said, maybe they don't mark it up that much, but they tell us what the material is, he can just go in there and paste that in Bluebeam right over top of where it says TBD and say like PL1 for this. And he's already got a material bubble placed there for that. So he just has to do some copy and paste work if that's the case. I didn't put any grain directions on here because, again, not really sure what that's going to be. It may or may not be grain, so I just kind of left that part alone for right now. We may find out what it is later, but for right now, no clue. And then inside of the planter, I labeled this with something called liner 2. Now, if you are in the material log, you're going to see at the very top on that standard job list, and should also be in our template too, there is 2 types of liners up there. So when you're dealing with a planter, you'll either probably be using liner 1 or liner 2. Liner 1 we tend to try to not use that as much anymore. It is literally what it sounds like. It is a 5-gallon bucket of Flex Seal that they literally just paint on the inside of the planter, and it will keep it from getting, it keeps some of the moisture out, but it doesn't, it's not as good as putting an actual liner in there. And so, so like we try not to use that as much anymore. For a while we were doing that because it was super simple and easy to do, and you didn't have to worry about like any sort of other coordinating with other trades or anything, because our shop could just roll that on with the paint roller. But again, it's not as durable as some of the other things that you can do. So the other things that we have, liner 2, which is what I put on here, it's kind of our newest standard. It looks kind of like a roll of garbage bags, but what it really is just a roll of black plastic, really. And they will put that in there, staple it into the inside of that planter, and it'll keep any type of water from getting into the wood or the framing below. So that is what liner 2 is, and I just kind of went with that because I'd rather go the extra, make sure it's right, rather than trying to go and use our old standard. If we can, you know, if we wanted to switch back to that, I'm fine with it too. But the liner 2 is definitely the better route to go for something like this. So yeah, so I use that for the inside of the planter. And then my dimensions around this guy here, I kind of was being a little careful in selecting where I wanted to put those dimensions, because at first I was thinking about it in terms of how do I really go about this. I guess what I could do too is I didn't put a overall dimension up here, but I can definitely do that too. Right about there. Uh-huh. Ah, get over there. Come on, dude. What are you doing with your life? All right. So I just put in an overall width for the entire planter. I already had my overall depth on this side over here. And then I kind of just broke it down in terms of like my top line of dimensions. I went from the step at the front to my field joints. And I just kind of went down the line, labeling out where all my field joints were. And then I added this little text box up top that just says FJ, meaning that that is just a field joint. We used to label them a little differently. Anytime there was a field joint, we would literally make a leader and point to it and say FJ for field joint on there. But that does produce more clutter on the drawing too. It's a lot easier to label it and not have as many lines and dots and things if you can just stack it right on top of the corner of your dimension string there. So we've been doing that a lot more, like a lot more recently. So I have those labeled up top. Moving down this side over here, I started going the way of I have my overall, but then I started was like, well, I need to label my planter too, so they know how to build that thing. So I went 12 inches in, 46 wide, 12 inches across the other side there. And then I continued that sort of method of dimensioning down here so I could show the other side of the planter drop down. So I went 12 outside to outside of planter, and then I just kind of took this and, oh, sorry, that was confusing. I was trying to figure out what the heck I did here. That's supposed to be dimensioning this, but I brought this dimension back to here to be a little bit easier, easier on the eyes, because then I don't have to have lines overlapping other parts of the drawing. Because there's already a lot going on here, so I kind of just brought those dimensions back to the edge of my drawing. And then I went ahead and I just labeled the footprint of where that steel stringer is approximately. Definitely put VIFs on that, because we really need to make sure that that's right before we go about actually, cutting anything there. So although these are exactly what you would expect to see based on that model they sent us, I just want to make sure that these are actually right before, we stick somebody on it with a saw and they cut it wrong or something. So we're VIFing those. And then the other side, the last side of our platform, what I have dimensioned is from corner of platform to top of my cutout, and then all the way through, just dimensioning the width of the cutouts. I am also probably going to put in a quick dimension here. Oh, I already did that. Never mind.
I was thinking that I didn't have that labeled, but it looks like I must have that there. So we're okay. All right. Planter, that's about it. Moving up to the next part of the plan view, this would be your 19th through 20th floor staircase. We did talk about this last time, but we put a label on each tread and each landing. That way we can label how many steps the shop is going to have to produce to do this. It's a lot easier for them to look at this and say like, okay, I need 9 here for this, and then I need, well, probably, I don't know if I should have restarted the numbering there, but anyway, they can pretty much look at this and be like, okay, I know I need like 20 treads for this drawing, so that's what I'm going to make. And the landing, I have it labeled with a number 2. Really, that's just for my sort of benefit to make sure that I didn't skip anything. But within the landing as well, I'd added some field joints in there too. Originally, it was drawn just like this, where there were no field joints in that landing, which when you're dealing with solid, you definitely need to have field joints for expansion and contraction, and also for just being able to get the material that wide. So I just went with the standard method of approach where I tried not to exceed 48 inches wide for our panels or our solid here. At least to show them, hey, we're going to need field joints in this landing. It can't just be all one solid slab of solid, because where are you going to find a tree that's 102 inches wide? Maybe the sequoias or something, I don't know, but or the redwoods, but definitely not around here. So, so I have field joints in there just so we can get that all situated. I also went ahead and put in some material calls last night. Greg came by and let me know that all the stairs are going to be SD1 for the project, which I think was a walnut color or a walnut solid. Yeah, solid walnut, flat cut. So that is what's going on there. I figured that was you. Anyways, so I went ahead and went like every 3 treads and put an SD1 call. I could probably do even less than that and write like a TYP underneath of it, and that would be fine too. But I kind of did that just so you could kind of see like this is continuing all the way up, all solid. My grain direction is all going from left to right when you're going up those stairs. It's all going long grain rather than the short grain. If you were to go this way, it's probably not very standard to see that anyway. So anytime you're dealing with treads, usually it's going to go left to right. Let's see. There's some dimensions on there. I think we talked about these a little bit last time too, but the treads, I went ahead and wrote 11-inch VIF TYP, and then labeled what I was calling out there. So it says tread depth on that. I also put one here. That way people don't get confused or think that maybe the treads above the landing are different, because they all have to be the same. So I did put that there just to make sure that it was clear that every tread from down below and up above is going to be 11 inches from front to back. The landing, I went ahead and put the overall dimension here, followed by a sub-dimension of just my EQ for where my field joints are going to go. And again, threw that little field joint guy up top so I could label that as what it is. On the treads, I added this in manually. It wasn't something that came in with the flat shot, but I went ahead and offset this line 1 inch this way. And that is to represent the fact that there is an overhang on these treads. So each tread is overhanging the tread below it by 1 inch. So I showed that with a hidden line up top on our plan views here. That way it's clear as day is what's happening there. Or at least hopefully clear as day. I probably didn't need to label this here since it's up top over here, but I did it anyway just in case it's questioning like what is this item that's down here below our stairs. So I labeled that from top or from left to right, saying it's 70 inches, which is the same as what's up here. And then these are just showing that the stairs are equally spaced from left to right of the planter, where the planter sticks out past the treads. I have one dimension here for my typical typical tread width thing that each tread is going to be a total of 65 inches wide, but I did label that with a VIF because we are dealing with a different vendor's product as we're dealing with the steel vendor. And it does have to line up with the steel regardless anyway, but it should be 65 from one width to the next, to the next, to the next, all the way up. That shouldn't vary. And the last thing over here is that little baby tread at the top. It might seem a little unusual, but that one is different. So I wanted to make sure that I gave them what I think the depth of that tread is going to be. That way, when the shop goes to make it, they don't have to make that full tread. They can just make that 5 3/4 tread there, and they shouldn't have any issues with that. All right. And then of course you have your elevation calls just like you would normally have for any other drawing. So those are all placed on there. I'm probably going to add those to this view up top here too, because I did not do that. Again, this was kind of, Cody saw me yesterday. I was a little frazzled a little bit. It was near the end of the day and people kept coming up to my desk. They're like, can you help me with this? And I'm like, dudes, it is like 4:30. I'm like, I will do my best to help you, but you're pulling me like 3 separate directions right now. So anyways, yeah, I'm going to put these elevation calls up there too. So that way they're on both views because we were using them for both, both this drawing and the one below. See, I need this one too. Get on over here. Oh yeah, and then that little arrow dude too. So how I made that arrow, in case you guys are following along later and you want to recreate that, all I did was I went and I used the leader command. And I started with, you want to start with the side you want the arrow to be on. So if I wanted the arrow to be up here, I would just click my mouse somewhere on that view, drag it straight across to wherever I want it to stop. And instead of putting text on there, you can hit none. And then what you can do with that from there is to change out the dot for an arrow. It's pretty easy. You just click on that leader. You go into your properties on the sidebar. And you can go to this section here called lines and arrows. And where it says dot there are several different other variants of leader, like tails and heads. So you can do, like what I did here is I went close filled arrow. And then I changed my arrow size here. Well, that's huge, but by changing this input here, it allows you to change the size of that arrow. It looks like I probably just went with a 1/2 inch wide arrow. That's all I did to make that. And I just dropped a little text box on there saying up, meaning that that is the up side of the stairs. Let me delete that. All right. So that's really about it for that plan view. And then if we look at the next one, it's going to be very, very similar anyway. Good morning. The other plan view has a lot of the same characteristics of the other one. You just have your material calls, you have your elevation calls. Again, field joints in your landing, very, very important. I just went ahead and made 2, just like the other landing, even though this landing's a little bit shallower in depth. And then pretty much copied a lot of the dimensions over from my other view to this one. Really not much else is different about this. So I don't have to spend a lot of time looking at this one, but I guess one other thing I can point out is that the labeling of these treads, I did continue them from where I left off on the other floor. So I left off at 22 here. And I went up to the staircase and I started with 23. I could have also gone a different route. I could have also went like 01A and then started back up on this staircase as like 01B instead of 23, which would have been fine too. Doesn't really matter too much, but I think yesterday I just decided I was going to go that route and go just continue the numbering from the 19th through 20th staircase through the 20th through 21st floor staircase. All right, cool. We can get into our elevation views next. So I will say a lot of times when you're dealing with stairs, you're probably not going to need elevation views for a lot of what you're doing here. I chose to include those on this drawing specifically because each of these treads has a finished end cap on the left and the right. Normally, what we're used to seeing is the treads are usually, I'll show you an example here. Usually the treads live, there's a copy of a few of these. They usually live like in here, in between the stringers, just like that. That's pretty standard. This particular staircase was a little bit different, but I mean, it is custom millworking, so we do have to deal with like kind of weird things here and there from time to time. So because this was a little bit different and it had finished ends on the left and rights of each tread, what I did was I went ahead and made those flat shots off our model so I could provide a elevation view of all four sides of the staircase in case it does help anybody later on with visualizing how this thing comes together. I also put hatching in here, which we don't usually do for elevation views, but I put this hatching in here to show the grain going from like side to side on the side of the steps. You could also just put a grain direction arrow on there too, and that would just be just as fine. But I kind of wanted to try to make this look a little spicier than what it was looking like. So I kind of cleaned it up a little bit and added that in to make it look a little nicer. Yeah, and you can notice down below, all these planter panels are labeled as TBD. I didn't put field joints in here, so I could do that too. Well, let me do that real quick. I'm just gonna drop in a text box here for that. Delete the leader, and then in my properties, a lot of times what I do with these is I like to set the justify from middle left to usually like middle center. What that'll do is the grip point on the text will be centered on it instead of off to the left or the right. So you can take that and use it to center your text right over top of your dimensions like that. So I'm going to add those in. I'm going to have to do that on the other side, I'm sure, as well. All right. So just like that. I don't have the field joints in this landing either or this one, so I'm going to add those in too. To do that, might be better to use my model space to do that part. What I can do, I can copy these lines off of my beeper landing. I can use the copy command using the base point of the front of that landing. And if I go back to my elevation view, I'll find the larger one, there it is. I'll just paste it right there using the edge of my landing, just like that. And then that should make sure that my field joints are in the same place as where they are in my top-down view too, because these were something that I added in after we had made the model. They didn't appear in our flat shot. So I'm going to do the same thing here and then work my way to the other elevation, just mirror those over. Copy. Using the front of my tread or my landing. And I'm going to go back down to here and paste it at the front of that landing there. And then trim these lines back so that they are touching the edges of that landing, just like so. Okay. Now, from there, I want to actually copy those into this section view here. I also want to copy those over to this elevation over here too. So let's just we'll do the mirror trick to get these over to the other elevation. I'm going to highlight these field joints. And what I'm going to do is before I set my mirror line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift and right click and go mid between 2 points. And I'm going to use this sort of like little magic trick to get this to work just right. So I'll go mid between 2 points. And if I select the front edge of my bottom landing, so front edge here, and then I select the front edge of the landing on this side, because my views are all lined up, that magically makes it so now if I hit mirror and don't erase the source object, this is going to allow me to line these field joints up just like they are on this view, but flipped the other way. Now, I guess I probably didn't need to do that anyway because they're all equally spaced anyway. So hindsight, maybe that was kind of dumb. I could have just copied them, but I didn't think about that until just now. All right. I'm copying these. I'm going to paste them down to the landings on the section view here. All right, and then I'm just going to clean these up just a tiny bit. Those field joints, I'm going to show them just going through that top layer of plywood and solid, just like that. Do the same thing up here, because you don't want it to cut through the bottom panel here. That would just kind of be silly to have like this little 1-inch panel at the edge. So we're not going to worry about that. Whoops, there we go. Okay, cool. Let me go back to what we were doing. It's kind of funny because I'm like checking my work as we're going through this. All right. Which the drawing turned out beautiful, but beautiful isn't everything. Sometimes you got to have accuracy in there too. So, all right. So we got those joints in there, no big deal. Joints in there, no big deal. I did want to, I want to add in a couple of section calls here too on these elevation views, which that was one of the things I thought about last night on my commute home, was that I did not put in a section view for this view here, and I didn't put one in for this view here, which this one is a horizontal cut through of the planter. And this one here is just a vertical section through the entirety of the staircase from left to right. So if I go back to our elevation views right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the section call block. I'm going to drop one in here. I'm going to rotate this around if it lets me do it. Oh, I don't rotate it again. I kind of want this to be on this side because there's more room over here. If I put that bubble over here, that thing's going to be cut off like, I don't know. I wish I had a funny pun for that. I can't think of one right now. Anyways, we'll put this over here. Ah, jackwagon. Making commentary about AutoCAD behind its back in front of its face. All right, I got to change this label here from S1.3 and it's going to read S1.7 because that is the page that has this section view here. So going back to that elevation view one more time, I put that in there. I have an elevation of the front and the back of the staircase, which we kind of looked at the other day a little bit. This is where I'm going to call out that vertical section through the stairs. I might actually add that hatching in for the treads here too to be consistent too, because right now it looks pretty plain Jane. And I don't think I even really put any dimensions on here, so we can also do that too. I have material calls, but I don't really have any dimensions on it. So we'll add that stuff in too. Before we even do that though, let's add that section call in for, well, I guess we got 2 section calls to add. We got our horizontal one at the base, and we have our vertical one for the what you want to call it, through the middle of the stairs. Ooh. All right, sometimes I like to do this in paper space, and other times I think it helps to do this type of stuff in your model space. In this case, I'm kind of going back to model because all my views are on separate drawing pages. So it allows me to use the copy command here and move it from this view to this view. But let's see, I may have to, let's see if I can make this fit. I have to go back to my paper space and just see if there's any issues with that. Yeah, look at that. I knew it. All right, I'm moving that over. All right, so I got that corrected. Vertical sections. So let's go over to our, our front and back of our staircase. Let's see if we can add those in. It's going to be kind of tight. There's really not a lot of room to work with here. So I might have to break some rules of my own. Usually what I'll tell you guys is you want to make sure that the flag and the arrow are outside of your view. But in order for me to do that, it would have to be like up here in the gray, and that's not realistic. So what I'm going to do is get it as close to the top as I can without it kind of crossing over that line. And then I'm going to take this line here, and it's going to have to overlap our view too, unfortunately. Makes me cringe at the thought of it, but it is what it is, I suppose, because this is a very tall staircase. So let's see, and that is view 1 on S1.6. So we need to change that out. That's 1.6. Very important. I'm going to go through here and copy that over from this to this. All right. And technically, really that should be flipped anyway, because you're facing the other way when you're cutting through it. I'm going to come back and do the hatching on this after we're done with everything else. So I'm going to say a note to self, hatch page S1.4. And keep going through here and see if there's anything else we can do. This is kind of hard to really dimension anything on this view because of all of the things happening here. There's a lot and not a lot of space to work. What I could do is I could potentially put in some height dimensions like right here, which would give this view at least a little bit of substance, because right now there's just nothing to it. It's really just there to show that, hey, I got a front view and a side view, or a front view and a back view of my stairs. So these are going to be the 2 planter steps. What I can do as well is copy this up. Well, let's copy it to here. So it's saying from top of tread to top of tread is also going to be 6 9/16. I'm going to write TYP after that too, because those should be the same from one step to the next. I guess I could also put in a height dimension on the actual tread itself too, like one of these. Although that is shown in the section too, so it really doesn't need to be here, but I'm going to put it in there because I just feel like this view is lacking in a lot. Like, I almost don't feel like it's really doing much of anything just being here on the drawing. So I'm going to roll with that. Then we can copy these over from this view to this view. The only exception to it is that this has to increase here. So that way it's showing the total height of the planter. And really there's not much else that I can really show dimensionally here. I mean, I could do a width, but there's really no room to put that in. So the only option I would have to do that is if I put it like on top of my treads, which I'm trying not to do that too. It's best if you can avoid putting dimensions or anything like that on top of your drawing, because it will start to clutter it up, make it hard to see what it is that you're looking at, which is a lot of the reason why I was talking about on our plan views earlier about pulling the dimensions back from the edge of my planter, like these guys, for example. I was pulling those back because I didn't want that line to be misinterpreted as a field joint, because when you go to plot it, of course, if you look at it on paper, it's black and white. So I pull that up. I mean, it literally could be, somebody could easily make that mistake because there's only that little tiny gap there, which, I mean, if you're not looking like closely, it's a potential issue that could happen. So I'm going to move that back just to be on the safe side. I'll leave that view alone for now. This one, see if there's anything to add to it or if we're okay here. All right, I have a material call here. Suppose I could probably write TYP after that too. That way, that way, I don't have to label every single tread saying like, hey, these are all SD1. I can just be like, okay, here you go, TYP SD1 for all of these guys. So I'll go ahead and label that. I think I have to do that on the other flip side as well. Yeah, I do. So I'm just gonna probably copy base. I'm gonna copy this over from this view over to the one on S1.3. Okay. And the last thing that I did add to these views too last night, right before I plotted this, was before when we did our flat shots, our view kind of looked like this. So the railing just stopped out in the open. And I was debating whether or not I want to do like a floor hatch like this up there, or if I wanted to show more like what their model showed. And so what I did was I went into that CAD model previewer and I kind of pulled some measurements on the concrete deck, which is just the structural concrete between the floors. And then they have a layer of like tongue and groove plank flooring on top of that. So what I did was I pulled some measurements off their model and I just sketched this in 2D on my elevation view and copied it throughout the rest of my elevation views to show there's a concrete deck that butts into the steel, and then there's a solid wood flooring that goes up there. But again, I grade it out. So that way it's not something that can be misinterpreted as something that Onsite is providing there. And so I did that across all of these, wherever the landing or the staircase met the floor above. So that way it had that sort of look to it and you could see what's happening there. That's probably about the last thing that I wanted to talk about with these elevation views. So really, I mean, most of the work that we did in our model saved our butts here, where we didn't have to really go through and do a bunch of extra, like drawing in all of these and drawing in all of this, because like that can take forever to do by hand in 2D. Anyways, let's keep on moving. That's the same notes for that view. This view, we just added those field joints in a minute ago. And same with this guy. I did something weird yesterday too. So yesterday morning, I received some information from Greg that the stairs were changing slightly. We were kind of briefly discussing that a little bit yesterday, but they went from having a 1/8 by 1/8 cork here at the metal plate to having a 1/4 inch full depth reveal that goes straight up to the LSL layer that's here. And so what I did, because I didn't feel like going and changing every single tread in the 2D drawing, what I did was I went in here, I fixed one of them, and then I turned it into a block, and I deleted, like I went through here and I deleted all the other treads that were already there. And then I just used my copy command and picked a base point on this that kind of matched up with the next one. And I just kind of went boom, 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 all the way up the staircase. So I didn't have to fix every single tread because that would have just taken forever. So fortunately now, because they are blocked, if they decided to change it for any reason, you can just go into that block editor and you could literally be like, okay, maybe they did want to go back to an 1/8 inch reveal. Well, boom, I can go 1.125, 0.125, and my hatch didn't stretch with it, but because it's just an example, I'm not going to bother fixing that. But if I fix it in one block, it updates every single tread now. So that saves us a lot of time there too. So I'm going to undo that though and go back to where we were before. All right, cool. This probably needs a TYP on it too. Because we only are calling out one tread, and if we want to do this the right way, we want to make sure that we are doing that with one of those TYP numbers on there. Okay. All right. So a lot of these same dimensions apply to the elevation view. So dimensionally, I'd kind of follow the same method of approach where I just did one TYP for the depth, one TYP for the height, and then measured my landing and my baby tread up top. I did that same thing in the elevation view. Section view, I had to do a lot of like changing out the hatches on here, which is fine. But I went through and I updated all these so that they show plywood hatching for the locator plate, base plate, top plate, and then the vertical plates on the ladder frame. I did show this as MDF on here. Not even sure if that's what it's really going to be because, again, we don't really know what that material is at this point in time. So I labeled that all with MDF hatching for right now, just temporarily. And because I did that, I also put 1 inch of scribe to the floor, all around the entirety of the base of our planter and platform thing. This says TYP, or sorry, TBD for the outside panels. And then the inside, I've labeled everything with liner 2. So that way we can have that plastic liner that goes and gets stapled in there. So we have all that covered. I didn't change anything else on here, but I did throw a fair amount of dimensions on it to show as much as I could, make it easier to see what's happening here. But yeah, not much else is different about that. So keep on moving to our 2 last pages here. This is our horizontal section through our planter. Again, we looked at this just a minute ago. We put a TBD on the outside perimeter of those panels. I try to put them on every corner. I went to put one on this corner though, and it was interfering way too much with my dimensions. So I just decided I was gonna not put one here and just put it on the other 3 corners, just to make it look nicer. I put these same notes on here about the stringers and how they're by others, and the platform has to be notched around them. That way that is in multiple places on the drawing in case it gets missed on the first go around. Put the inside dimensions of the planter here, outside dimensions of my platform out here. These are my field joints. So again, we'll label those here. Field joints. Oof. Oops. Yeah. Again, this is me checking my own work because I didn't have time to really do it last night. So I'm doing it now once I've got that fresh set of eyes on it, like we talked about a lot of times. All right. That should about do it. Got my liner 2 dims or material calls in there. And I didn't really bother dimensioning anything with the ribs or the sidewall depths or anything like that. A lot of that's going to get determined by the listing department and the shop when they actually go to build it. I built it as close to what I feel like it's going to look like as I possibly could. But they have the liberty to change it if anything does make more sense for them to build it a different way. I just kind of went with my gut feeling on that by doing the rabbited sort of nailers on the front, rabbited dye-wall up and down, and the ladder frame across the top. Anyways, and then of course, we have this last page here. This last page is just showing those same details that are in the stair CAD file that we've been using a little bit to work with and modeling our staircase. I've updated them a little bit since the last time we looked at them. One, I put in those 1/4 inch full depth reveals at the front and back of the underside of our treads. I did the same thing here on our landing as well. So those are there too. I've also added in additional notes about the hardware, although a lot of this is by others. I wanted to make sure it was called out, so I put in 1/2 inch by 13 flathead machine screw by others there. That's what they had on their drawing from the steel vendor. So I was like, I'm just going to place that note on there too, so it's understood as to what's happening there. And then this one here actually does interact with our woodworking, and that's how the treads are being attached to the steel plates. So they have machined out like countersunk screw heads for us to be able to use some screws in there to attach. And they said that the type of screw that they're accounting for is a number 14 2-inch flathead wood screw. We do have blocks for those in the CAD file, and I have been working on getting them into the tool pallets. But if we didn't have one, for example, like this is a machine screw, so we don't usually keep those in our blocks because they're not like woodworking screws. I had to go on McMaster-Carr's website and find one like that. It's pretty easy to do, but the beauty of it is the McMaster-Carr website is actually very, very helpful when it comes to finding little bits of hardware that you normally wouldn't normally need. So if I'm on their website, again, really good website to bookmark if you haven't already. I'm looking for this machine screw just for example here. It's calling it out as a 1/2 inch by 13 flathead machine screw. So I can start by typing in machine screw up here. It'll come up with all of the different machine screws that they have on their website. And you can scroll through the different options. So I'm looking for something that is a 1/2 inch thread by 13 threads. So 1/2 inch by 13. So if I scroll down, eventually I'll see one, hopefully that matches that. So I can go to there, and then it narrows down their inventory list to a set of machine screws that have that thread count on them. And then you can go a step further, and we know that we're dealing with a flathead. So we can go down here and select flat. So then it narrows it down even further. And then the last thing I did to narrow it down was I wanted to see how long of a machine screw that they were building this with. And I think I just scaled it off of their model because it didn't actually say in their notes. But let me just check it here. It's a 3/4 inch tall screw. So we'll go over to here. There should be an option for your screw length at some point right there. So you can click on 3/4 of an inch, and it's going to give you all the options they have available for a machine screw that's a flathead, 1/2 inch by 13 thread count, and 3/4 of an inch tall. And so I think I just went with this top one because for us it's just to show that like there's going to be a machine screw there, but we're not even providing it. So I don't necessarily care too much about what spec it is because it's not part of our scope. But if we were providing it, I'd like to actually try to show as much of the information as I can. But if you go on McMaster-Carr's website, you narrow down your search options and you go into like this submenu here. If you're looking for anything like this, you want to click on this serial number here. That's going to take you to the product page. Well, it will take you there if you click product details. And from there, they actually have CAD files for almost everything on their website. I would say almost because I'm not sure that they have stuff for everything, but they even have CADs for like little machine screws like this. So it's really helpful if you need to bring one into your drawing. You can either tell it, hey, I want to look at a 2D DWG file of that, and you can just download it, open it up in CAD, and import it into your drawing. If you needed it for 3D purposes, you would want to use either the 3D step file or 3D step no threads. Got stairs on my brain. So 3D step or 3D step no threads. The reason there's a no threads one is because the ones with threads, if you have to put a bunch of them in your CAD file, it will slow your computer down. if you're only doing like 1 or 2, it's no big deal. But let's say I needed to bring in a 3D model just to show you guys how you would do it. You click on this 3D step, go over here to download. It's going to save it somewhere. I'll put it on my desktop here and we'll hit save. So now I can go back into AutoCAD. And what I'm going to do is type import. Okay, and then this little import file menu should show up. I saved that 3D step file to my desktop. So what I need to do is go to my desktop and then find that file. It should be, it started with a jumbled mess. It was this guy, I think. I'm bringing that one in. So if I click on that, hit open, it's going to say your import job is processing in the background. You can just hit close on that. Once it's done, and you can see this little flashing icon down here saying import job in progress. Once it's done, this little bubble will show up there. And you can click on this link here once it's done importing. And that's going to actually bring it into your CAD file. So as soon as you click that link, it shows up at 0, 0. So it shows up right here in our case. And then if I rotate my view, you can literally see I have a 3D screw in here now. So pretty cool stuff. If you ever have to deal with a lot of mechanical drawings or metal drawings, it's really helpful to have that resource available to you. Because sometimes there's going to be screws or bolts or things that we don't have in our CAD system that you may actually need. So McMaster-Carr is definitely a very, very good resource for that. There's other websites too, like Granger is another good one too, but they don't have as many CAD files for their products. So I pretty much religiously use McMaster-Carr for a lot of things. For like mechanical parts like screws and hanger attachments or like threaded rods and different things like that, because you can get all that stuff right off their website for free. All right. Anyways, go back to 2D wireframe because I'm getting the lag again. All right. We were on this page. We are just taking a look at it. So I put those fasteners in there so you can kind of see what they looked like, label them to tell the viewer what those fasteners are. And then I labeled out some other stuff too, like 3/4 here, put a little sign note saying, hey, this 3/4 is a 1/4 inch of solid with a 1/2 inch of plywood glued to it. Probably not even needed to put that note, but I wanted to do it just to make it clear as to what I was talking about there. And then these, I put a little bit of extra info on there saying it's 2 layers of 3/4 thick plywood, not some kind of weird, monstrous 1.5 inch thick piece of plywood. That did change, just so you guys are aware too. In the original sketch that I had provided for the stairs, we had these little cross plates for the metal. And then we were going to ask them to provide a sheet of metal that sat on top of those. Since the project manager and the contractor had spoken about it, they decided they were going to use 2 layers of 3/4 plywood, which they believe is going to be enough to beef it up to make sure it's not going to start to warp or sag or anything like that as people walk on it. So that's why that looks a little different than what you're seeing on this tread. This tread has the LSL on top of it rather than the plywood layers. But really it's not that much different. It's just a different type of material. But again, I did label that differently here too. Like I actually did say LSL for that. And this side I went and wrote 2 layers of 3/4 thick ply. Same notes about the fasteners, the reveals, all the needed dimensions for the shop to build this tread. And this view here is kind of just like a blow up of part of the drawing, which I do want to call this out somewhere. I'll probably go back to my section view and point this out somewhere on that print to show you how to get to this view from that section view. So there's a map going back to it. Otherwise, I think that's probably the only other thing I want to change with this drawing is making sure I have a blow up call out going to this page to take you to this little section, enlarge type section view here. Oh, all right. So, to do that, I think what I'm going to do is draw a rectangle around the break lines like this. It's on the geometry layer, so it's not really on the right layer, but that's okay. It is centered over the landing. And what I'm going to do is just take that landing, find my landing. It was this one here that we used. Put that there. And then I'm going to fillet the corners of my box here. I just used a 12-inch radius on that. Kind of like, I just kind of eyeballed it. You could pick a different radius. It doesn't need to be anything specific, but I'm going to fillet those, put them on the dimension layer, and then make it a hidden line. And I'm going to call this out similar to how we would call out a detail call. I'm going to put like one of those bubbles on it with an arrow pointing to it saying, hey, see view 1 on S1.8 for this guy. I'll just use one of these. S1.8. And I'm just going to connect the center of that to the center of my drawing here with a line, and then I'm trimming these back. Just like that, kind of. There we go, that's better. And then I can use match properties to kind of fix that up there, just like that. All right, that's about it. So questions or anything for these stairs at all? Anything you guys can think of?
Not off the top of my head. I think I
Okay.
mentioned yesterday as I go through the earlier videos, I'll probably, I might come up with some, I might not, depending on what's been answered
Sure.
in this one,
Yeah. And sorry, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit too because I had to get that done for Greg yesterday. So I kind of took the liberty of going through yesterday afternoon and just adding in the hatches and notes and things. So I wanted to at least cover that with you guys so that way I wasn't just like, hey, this is the drawing or the finished drawing that we're matching. I just wanted to walk you guys through it to see if there's any questions or make sure that we covered all of the additional notes, section calls, material calls, all that fun stuff. But if there's no other questions yet, that's fine. I'll probably replot this. I'm going to go back and add the hatching to this view and this view here, but I'll replot it once I'm done with that and save it to the prelim plots folder. If you guys want, for right now, I don't really have much else to send your way at this time. So if you want to keep working through this, that would be perfectly fine. Don't know, how far are you guys through this stuff so far? I know, Cody, you got all the treads and the landing for the first set of stairs pretty much in your model, right?
Yeah, I got the I can speak. The little one. I got the little one in this morning.
Okay.
And then I was trying to start on the the I don't know. My mind just went blank. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I know you're not feeling the greatest today too, so hopefully you start feeling better soon.
Hopefully I will.
All right. Well, Kelly, if you had any time to really jump in there and work on any of that stuff at all yet, or are you just starting out?
I'm about 2/3 to 3/4 through the first video.
Nice.
So I've got, I'm kind of going through the process where you were mitering through the tread and working on getting through that. So
Okay. Cool. That's awesome.
So
All the
probably will
3-point
be,
slices.
yeah, I'm about half, or I guess fully done with the tread press pulling that and then mirroring over
Mhm.
the end cap to the other side.
Okay. Well, cool. Very nice. Very nice. I don't remember where we were on any of the videos because there's too many of them at this point. But yeah, that's pretty cool to hear. Glad you guys are getting through it a little bit at a time. I know I keep throwing stuff at you guys like markups or little side quest type things occasionally. So, anything like that's probably going to take precedent over like this anyway. But because we're kind of at a standstill for the little bit of time we have here, I'm going to keep working through this. I'll try to find something we can work on next if we do keep running low on work. Is there anything you guys would like to learn about specifically, or do you want me to just pick something that
Blocks
can
would be
work
great.
on?
I know that we've mentioned them several times in training,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it'd be really helpful to learn what goes into something like that.
In the blocks? Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. I'll probably we'll probably go through. We can do that next if you guys would like. We'll go through like the block editor, all the different menus and the different things that are in there. I have AutoCAD books here that talk about it too. If Cody, if you want to look through any of those, and as funny as the Cody up in Illinois also has pretty much the same AutoCAD books there. So you could borrow his if you ever want to look through those and see more about how the block editor works. But we can work through that next once you guys are pretty caught up with these stairs and look at that. And I'll show you guys how we can make some of the more complex blocks too. But I want to start with like the block editor menus and getting familiar with that first. And then I'll show you how to do like those lookup tables and all that fun stuff in there. So that way, if you guys want to play around with that at some point down the road, I have a little bit more background on it. We did go over a little bit of blocks here, but barely anything. We barely scratched the surface because all we were doing was taking like the lines that we already drew and just making it a block, and that's all we did. So, but yeah, I'll put together some notes so we can do blocks next for you guys. That'd be cool. All right then. Anything else you guys got?
Not right now, no.
All right.
I'll reach out
sweet.
if I have any questions through the process of the videos, though.
All right, sounds good. Okay, then I will leave you guys alone. I had to talk to Josh Peterson about something real quick too, so I'm gonna jump into a call with him. But if you guys need anything, just let me know. Either shoot me a message or a call, and I'll help you get through if there's anything that's causing you problems or anything. So.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Hopefully that was helpful, and then I'm sure I'll hear from you again soon. So.
Yeah, cool beans. Thanks, Jacob.
All right. Yep. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.